Hello, fifth grade. It's Mrs. Wright. It is Monday, March 30th. And I hope you had a great weekend. It was beautiful outside, although this pollen's starting to get to people. So make sure you're washing up all the time. Get that pollen off you if you've been outside. So today it is The Thief of Always, chapter 18. And I'm trying to remember where we left off. Oh, yikes. Harvey went into the basement cellar and found the box, and he's trying to open it, and he's not sure who's inside, if it's Mrs. Griffin's or if it is Karna, I think. And so the title of chapter 18 is called The Bitter Truth. So let's find out what happens. He almost shouted out loud, seeing the terrible state that poor Mrs. Griffin was in. She was staring up at him with wild eyes, her hair pulled out in clawfuls, her face purple with bruises. A foul rag had been stuffed into her mouth. Harvey carefully removed it, and she began to speak, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Thank you, my sweet, thank you," she said. "But oh, you shouldn't have come back. It's too dangerous here." "But who did this to you? Jives? Ritkiss?" "But he ordered it, didn't he, Harvey?" Harvey said, helping her up. "Don't tell me he's dead, because I know that doesn't matter. Hood's here in this house, isn't he?" "Yes," she said, holding on to him as she climbed out of the box. "Yes, he's here, but not in the way you think." She began to weep, the tears clogging her words. "It's all right," Harvey said. "Everything's going to be all right." Her fingers went up to her face and touched the tears. I thought I'd never cry again," she said. "Look what you've done." "I'm sorry," said Harvey. "Oh no, my sweet, don't worry. It's wonderful," she smiled through the tears. "You've broken the curse on me." "The curse? What curse?" "Oh, it's a long story." "Well, I want to hear it." "I was the first child who came to Hood's house," she said. "This was many, many years ago. I was 9 when I first walked up the front path. I had run away from home, you see." "Well, why?" "My cat had died, and my father had refused to buy me another one. And what do you think Ritkiss gave me the very first day I arrived?" "3 cats," said Harvey. "You know how this house works, don't you?" Harvey nodded. "It gives you whatever you think you want." "And I wanted cats and a home and..." "What?" Another father," she shivered with fear, remembering the horror. "I met Hood that night. At least, I heard his voice." Stu Cat had come to her feet, and she paused and stooped and gathered the creature in her arms. "Where did you hear him?" Harvey asked. "In the attic at the top of the house. And he said to me, 'If you stay here forever and ever, you'll never die. You'll grow old, but you'll live until the end of time and never weep again.'" "And that's what you wanted?" "It was stupid, but yes, I did. I was afraid, you see, afraid of being put into the ground like my cat." A new wave of tears came running down her pale cheeks. "I was running away from death." "Straight into its house," Harvey said. "Oh no, child," Mrs. Griffin said. "Hood isn't death." She wiped away the tears so that Harvey could see more clearly. She could see Harvey more clearly. "Death is a natural thing. Hood isn't. I would welcome death now, like a friend I'd driven away from my door. I've seen too much, my sweet. Too many seasons, too many children." "Why didn't you try and stop him?" "I have no power against him. All I could do was give the children who came here as much happiness as I knew how." "So, how old are you?" Harvey asked her. "Who knows?" she replied, laying her cheek against Ducat's fur. "I grew up and old in a matter of days. But then the passage of time seemed to lose its hold on me. Sometimes I've wanted to ask one of the children what year it is in the world outside." "I can tell you." "Don't," she said, putting her finger to her lips. "I don't want to know how many years have flown. It would hurt too much." "Well, what do you want then?" "To die," she said with a little smile. "To slip out of this skin and go to the stars." "Is that what happens?" It's what I believe, she said, but Hood won't let me die, not ever. That'll be his revenge on me for helping you escape. He already had Blue Cat murdered for showing you the way out. Hood is going to let you go, Harvey said. I promise. I'm going to make him. She shook her head. You're so brave, my sweet, she said, but he won't let any of us go. There's such a terrible emptiness inside him. He wants to fill it with souls, but it's a pit, a bottomless pit. And you are both headed for it, she said an oily voice. The speaker was Mar. She was oozing down the stairs. We've been looking for you up and down, she said to Harvey. You better come with me, child. She extended her arm in Harvey's direction. He remembered all too well her transforming touch. Come, come, she said. I might still get you out of trouble. It might still get you out of trouble if you let me make something humble of you. He likes humble things, does he, Mr. Hood? Fleas, worms, scabby dogs. Come to me, child, quickly. Harvey looked around the cellar. There was no other way out. If he was to get Mrs. Griffin up into the sun, it had to be by the way of the stairs, and Mar was standing in front of them. He took a step in her direction. She smiled toothlessly. Good child, good, she said. Don't, Mrs. Griffin said. She'll hurt you. Hush, woman, Mar said. We're going to have to nail that lid down next time. Her greasy green eyes swiveled back to Harvey's direction. He knows what's good for him, don't you, boy? Harvey didn't reply. He simply kept walking towards Mar, whose fingers seemed to be growing like a snail's horns, reaching out to fix upon his face. You've been such an obedient boy, Mar went on. Maybe I won't turn you into a worm after all. What would you like to be? Tell me, what's in your heart? Never mind my heart, Harvey said, reaching out towards Mar. What's in yours? A puzzled look came over Mar's face. Mine, she said. Yes, said Harvey. What do you dream of being? I never dream, she said defiantly. You should try it, Harvey told her. If you can change me into a worm or a bat, you could do that for yourself. The defiance on her face became bafflement, and the bafflement turned to panic. Her outstretched fingers began to retreat into themselves. Harvey reached for them like lightning, however, interweaving his fingers with hers. What do you want to be? He said to her. Think. She started to struggle, and he felt her magic surging through her fingers. He felt her magic surging through her fingers into his, attempting to work some change on him. But he didn't want it to be a vampire bat anymore, and he certainly didn't want to be a worm. He was quite happy to be himself. The magic, therefore, had no hold on him. Instead, it flowed back into Mar, who began to shake as though she were being dipped in very icy water. What are you doing? She demanded. Tell me what's in your heart, he said, returning her invitation. I'm not telling you, she replied, still trying to wrest her fingers free from his. But she was not used to having her victims resist her this way. Her muscles were soft and flabby. She pulled and pulled, but she couldn't escape him. Leave me alone, she said. If you harm me, Mr. Hood will have your head. I'm not harming you, Harvey replied. I'm just letting you have your dreams, the way you let me have mine. I don't want them, she yelled, struggling more than ever. He wouldn't let go. Instead, he drew closer to her as if to wrap her up in his arms. She started to spit at him, great globs of slime, but he wiped them from his face and kept approaching her. No, she began to murmur. No! But she couldn't keep the magic she'd intended for him from working on her own skin and bones. Her fat face began to soften and run like melting wax. Her body sagged in its raging coats, and a greenish gruel began to pour out onto the floor. Oh, she sobbed. You child! What dream is this? Harvey wondered, that was turning Mar to mush. She was growing smaller all the time. Her clothes dropping off of her body shrinking, her voice becoming thin. It could only be a moment before she disappeared altogether. What do you dream about? Harvey said as Mar's fingers ran between his own like brackish water. I dream of nothing, Mar replied, her eyes sinking back into her disintegrating skull. And that's what I've become. She was almost lost in the folds of her clothes. Nothing, she said again. She was no more than a dirty puddle now, a puddle with a fading voice. Nothing. Then she was gone, devoured by her own magic. You did it, Mrs. Griffin said. Child, you did it. 1 down, 3 to go, Harvey said. 3? Ritkiss, Jive, and Hood himself. You're forgetting Karna. Is it still alive? Mrs. Griffin nodded. I'm afraid I've heard its shrieks every night. It wants revenge. And I want my life back, Harvey said, taking her by the arm and escorting her, still carrying Stu Cat, at the bottom of the stairs. And I'm going to get it, Mrs. Griffin. Whatever it takes, I'm going to get it. Mrs. Griffin glanced back at the heap of clothes that marked the place where Mar had vanished into thin air. Maybe you can, she said, with astonishment in her voice. Of all the children who've come here, maybe you're the one who can beat Hood at his own game. So, Harvey used her magic against herself. And because she had nothing in her heart that she wanted to be, that's what she became. Very interesting. So, make some predictions in your head about what you think is going to happen, because I have a lot running through my head right now about what could go on. And it's very interesting. So, until next time, 5th grade, be good, do your work, have some fun, enjoy your friends, call them, write them a letter. See you tomorrow. Bye.